Hello, you Tubelonians. You are watching this video because you want a few tips on cleaning your oven that's not a self-cleaning oven. We have a simple oven here at our lake cabin, and so that means that it has to be cleaned out manually every couple times a year, depending on how much you bake. And so I'm going to show you a few tips that my wife has figured out. Karen has told me that she discovered getting this coil out of here is going to make this a lot easier to get in there and move around. I do know that the coil, make sure it's shut off. I do know that the coil is something that can be tipped up carefully, but I also know these coils quit after a while. So because it's an electronic part, I think removing it's a lot easier. It just plugs into the back, but you do have to remove 2 screws. Anyway, the tips. We're going to remove that coil. Then we're going to show you that putting your rack, she put both racks in here, in a bag, and then spray it down. That kind of keeps the chemical contained. And then let it sit. We actually let it sit in the tub. Don't let it sit too long. Don't forget about it, because the chemical could react with your bag, and that could be a bad thing. It could make a bigger mess for you. But we've been doing this for a long time. Actually, she has been doing this. I guess I used to clean ovens for my dad's rental properties. And the third tip was, let's see, remove that. I'll show you that in a second. Put the racks in the bag.
And newspaper underneath for the drips.
Oh, yes. And she's pretty much done, but put newspaper under the door to avoid any drips damaging your floor. And if you have vinyl-based products, you could wreck your floor if you leave the chemicals sitting on that floor for very long. The dogs see the rabbits. What else do we have here?
These work really well too.
The Brillo pads? Yeah. For scratching down the surface. And it depends. I mean, if you have all your controls shut off, you're not going to have a problem removing that. But if you feel better, just unplug your device. Or simply, instead of removing your oven from the wall, and there's an anti-tip device, or there should be in there, so it's going to be a little harder to remove it out from the wall. It's easier to just walk back to your circuit breaker box and find the breaker that says oven, and then just trip that off. And that's pretty well labeled. In this case, the circuit breaker you're looking for is titled range. I was looking for oven. It might also be labeled as appliance, but you can see that this is a double breaker and that the range is the correct one to shut off in this case. If you're not sure, just leave it alone and don't pull the coil. Now we can properly go back. The dogs are nervous because Daddy's doing something. Okay, now it's off. All right, the size that I need to use today is a 1/4 inch. Yours may vary. Some of them might use a screw instead. And then set these in a place you won't forget, because you're going to need that, obviously, to put it back together. Typically, we'll do this on a sunny, warm, windy day, because even after you clean with the chemical, it's going to have a stench. All right, zoom in on this. I've never had this particular unit out, but you can see that you're going to have to disconnect this. She's funny. She gets her humor from me. Practical joker. All right, we ran into a problem that you may see as well, and that is that they don't make these easily removed, or if they are, I'm just not seeing it. And so and touching those wires with bare fingers, if your power is on, might be risky if the oven temp is selected on. So do this with great caution, and if you have any doubts, just don't remove this part. What we can do is I can hold this up and she can work under it, and then we don't end up touching those wires, which I did, but I have more confidence and more experience than maybe you do. So just don't touch those, please. So I'm going to hold these being that it's looser, it's out of the way. But most ovens I have seen have little plug-in receptacles, and this just slides out of that. It's like a special plug-in that your coil goes into. But you might run into this where it's still attached and you're not going to take the time to clip those wires. I definitely wouldn't, because that's a lot of voltage. While she's working on this, another quick tip that I've discovered is if you can actually remove your coil, you want to give it a gentle wipe down. I would not submerge, in fact, absolutely do not submerge that in your sink water. But I do wipe the coil down with a wet, damp washcloth, so that chemical that's on there that would stink for a few minutes when you turn it on for the first time, that you reduce that, because it does smell. That's why we open the doors in the summer and let the wind blow through to get that smell out of here. But in my experience, self-cleaning ovens create a lot more stink than this does.
Another good tip is to wear an icky shirt.
Yes, this chemical, I've actually left it on my fingers and didn't clean it off properly in the past, and it will burn you. So
Well, this one is a non-toxic one, I think.
non-toxic. Well, then what good is it? If it doesn't kill the grease in the bottom of my oven. No, there used to be some really toxic and stinky chemicals, but Karen has since found better ones, and it just takes a little more elbow grease. And she's really good at that elbow grease. I'm going to pull this up out of your way so you can get those points. In my experience, also, I found that the deep char that's like these little specks that are really adhering, those aren't the ones that make the stink for you when you're cooking. The cooking actually is the most fresh stuff. It's more the brown material that isn't fully baked. This stuff is charred so much it's just like charcoal, so it's really not going to create much smell. So I guess I wouldn't worry too much about getting every single little speck out of there. The main thing is you're getting the majority of the chunks, and also of maybe the liquids. They're so good at this. And now it's time to make pizza. And now it's time to go cross-country skiing. But first I gotta get my wool clothing on, because it's still about 32 below. Thanks for watching Frosty Life.